We'll call to order the meeting of the Joint Review Board for Monday, August 19th, 2019. Roll call. I have Chad Weidinger on here, but sitting in for Chad is Brad Klingsport.
Here.
Cale Plazinski.
Here.
Bob Matthews.
Here.
Brent Waker.
Here.
And Diana Ellenbecker from the City of Green Bay. All present. All right. I entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. So we have a motion by Bob, second by Brent. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That's approved. And then for the approval of the minutes, I would entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
A motion by Cale and second by Brent. Any discussions, any changes? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Approved. All right, and then we're going to go right into the regular business. This is something Kevin and Director Vonk and I had discussed. We would like to entertain a motion to suspend the rules to take action of 1 through 17 with one vote instead of 17 individual. And then at some point, if you wanted to pull one out, we could still vote on the majority of them and then take the other items separate. This would also allow the director to move from one item right into another item instead of taking 17 separate items. That
I'm
is
fine with that.
What?
I'm fine with that.
Okay, is it a motion to?
I'll make a motion. I'll
Suspend the
second.
rules, okay. So we have a motion by Bob, second by Cale, to suspend the rules to take action on 1 through 17 with one vote. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that is approved. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Director Vonk.
Thank you. So what I'll do is I will go through pretty much in order as they're listed on here, the items that are up for consideration. As you can see, we have a lot this time around. What this is, it's a culmination of really trying to update these tax increment districts for those that have really kind of served their purposes, put them on a path towards closing them down, making some adjustments to others to adapt to current conditions, and then the creation of 2 new districts. I think, we've talked with this board at the city, about a few of these districts in terms of, their purpose and their long-term prospects. And so really wanted to put out here today before you these recommendations, which will then, the Redevelopment Authority will be holding a public hearing on tomorrow. And then basically making recommendations to the City Council, who will take this up at their meeting on September 17th. Then this will come back to the Joint Review Board at a time after that. We'll send out some dates between the 17th and the end of September, really to finalize all these actions. The purpose of the organizational meeting, which we have today, is really to just provide an update what we're thinking about, or make any corrections, tweaks before we start going through the process of formal approval. So if you want to stop and talk about any of them, I'd be happy to take questions, or Director Ellenbecker. We just thought it'd be easier just for purposes of business to go back and forth, because some of these in terms of closures and allocations are tied into one another. So to have that conversation all on the table at once, I think is appropriate. So this was the list that was put out. Probably our most expensive public hearing notice we've had to put in the paper in quite some time because of all the language about this. But when it comes time to actually adopting some of these things, we will have to adopt them all individually and separately. But really, again, wanted to provide them as a package deal. So the first talks about Tax Increment District 5 and a territory amendment. So this is TID 5. It's our biggest TID, our oldest TID, or one of our older ones besides 4, and really covers a lot of territory on the east and west sides of downtown. One of the things, the territory amendment here would be to actually subtract parcels that will be overlapping with the new tax increment district 22 that is proposed to be created. Statute allows you to have overlapping tax increment districts. But for the purposes of, I think, accounting, we would like to simplify matters here, and really just kind of prevent that overlap. They will overlap for 1 year in terms of the territory amendment. It won't come out for this year because we're past the deadline, but then moving forward, these would be removed. With that, there was a list in the packet that talks about the parcels that are involved. In terms of future cash flows or projections, there hasn't been a ton of development on these particular sites, which is hence the reason we're creating tax increment 22. So we don't anticipate any impact to the cash flows or the ability of TID 5 to perform its obligations. So we're recommending the removal of the territory with the overlap.
So does TID 5 stand on its own then with this adjustment?
Yes, so you look at, we're going back through in the annual report, the projections in TID 5 for, you look at, excuse me, that's not on this one, but the incremental development that was created, most of these, and I don't have the exact number, parcels, are close to the same value that they were at when TID 5 was created. So there's not a lot of increment being generated here. The school district has a lot of property, the redevelopment authority has a lot of property, there's some surface parking. There really hasn't been much improvement in terms of actual increment that's going into the cash flows. Most of the development has been further up Broadway and then on the east side of the river in the downtown core.
So this is showing that there's a surplus, a projected surplus of about $107,000. So this move does not affect that.
In our estimation, no. I mean, there's still, things that could happen in
There
this
are no
development.
assumptions built in that said you're going to generate increment from that.
Not in this area, no.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Other questions on 5?
You kind of alluded to it, but just to make it explicit, so the parcels removed from TID 5 basically don't have an incremental value? They're
Correct. Most all of them are at the base value today, as they were when this TID was created in 99.
99.
And this will, we'll see these parcels again in 22, is that right?
Correct. Most of them, as you can see, the map overlap.
Mm-hmm.
So the ones with the dotted figures, so you'll see some of these go back into 22. These parcels basically between Howard and Walnut, and the K&K warehousing, and then some of the RGL stuff in the middle will not go back into the new TID. I think, and we'll get when we talk about 22, I think this has been just part of our philosophies. We want to capture parcels where there's either zero value existing now, or we know there's a sooner than later development project. And so for those parcels that won't go back in, we don't see that.
Okay.
Others on 5. All right. So talking about TID 7, the next 3 actions talk about TID 7. Lombardi and Ashland corridors. This tax increment district was created in 2002, primarily to facilitate development of the Tundra Lodge. With that, as we talked about the annual report, incentive has been paid off for this, and there's a healthy bit of increment here. So what we're doing in a proposal, this chart kind of explains what we're thinking in terms of winding this tax increment district down. So starting the year, and you saw in the 2018 year-end report, we're starting 2019 with a balance of $710,000. We'll get additional increment this year. Additional public expenses that are slated there. Part of the project plan calls for pedestrian improvements in that area. If you've ever been there, game day, Lambeau Field or the arena, and that's been one of the complaints the city has gotten in terms of lack of pedestrian amenities in that area. We are looking at installing sidewalks in the entire district and some lighting to help out, especially when it's nighttime over there. And so those will be the public expenses that we have slated for that area. Development expenses, that's just the last bit of money to pay off. There's one development agreement that will, the Shore West development agreement will extend beyond this if we terminate, so just to put that money into escrow. And then debt expenses, that's the last money we had, I think, for some infrastructure in there. I think that was some of the street work that was done. So to pay off those, ending balance 450, then in 2020, basically, again, the last public expenses, pay off the remaining debt. And then with that, we would like to use the surplus in here and recommend an allocation to Tax Increment District 9, which is the University Heights TID, which we'll get to, which has been operating at a deficit. The plan is to call for termination of that TID, but in order to do so and then keeping it off the tax levy, we're looking to allocate funds from other tax increment districts to close that down. 2020 pays off all the project costs. We are looking at employing the state statute allows for municipalities to ask for an extension for 1 year to put increment into affordable housing fund. So what it would do is take that year of increment and put it into a fund that would be allocated or restricted for housing. Of those funds, all of them have to go towards housing. 75% of those funds have to go towards affordable housing. And so we've had some early discussions here about how we would allocate those funds. Generally probably complement or enhance the number of our programs that we have here at the city that are funded with block grant dollars. So we provide low interest loans for home improvement. We provide grants for new homes in your neighborhood. We also borrow money for our neighborhood enhancement fund. This could potentially replace some of that borrowing in terms of getting that fund established. With that then, it would be fully shut down at the end of 2021, which would be before its mandatory termination date of 2029. So even with the extended year for the affordable housing, we'll still be shutting this one down ahead of schedule, fully terminated at the end of 2021.
The debt expenses that are listed up there, is that callable debt?
I'm going to defer to, I don't think it is.
No, I would say no, because in almost every case, they have always taken out debt that's 20 years, and then it can be refunded at the 10-year mark,
Okay.
but it can't be advance refunded. I can look up the specifics of this one, but
And my question was just if we have a $450,000 ending balance, if we could prepay and save the interest on the balloon payment on the 260.
Typically they are done. I'm just going to look and see what the.
And probably what we'd have to do, that 260, is actually we'd escrow it and keep paying out 2 or 3 more years after
Okay.
that.
Correct.
Yeah. And so that's when we put those funds together, same thing for the development expense, we would still owe that developer, I think it's around $15,000 payment till the end of the TID. We're basically just putting those funds in an escrow to say, look, the TID's closed, but we still have an obligation to you,
Right.
so there's still payments that go out. From the debt side, if they're not callable, we just have to make the payments when we can.
To your point, though, it was 2013 and 2014 borrowing, so in 2023 and 2024, there's a chance we could refund it at that point.
Okay.
We're looking to have this closed down before that, but that would mean we potentially don't have to pay the debt out until all the way to this. It's called we could actually potentially refund it.
So this is probably
2014.
projected on calling it 2023,
Yeah,
the next call date.
Yeah, let me see. when
So that calculation is based on that.
It is not, actually, it is still out to the life of it to be,
To pick up some interest.
you would reduce your amount
So it'd be
outstanding.
a little less than that.
Yep, it would be a slightly less than that. assuming we were to refund it at a lower rate.
Yeah.
Again, when that's, if the
Right.
assumption is that it would be, that we would want to take, that'd be a large enough savings for us to want to refund it in '23 and '24.
Correct. The second part for the development expenses, we generally also put those in escrow and pay out as per the agreement. Just don't think it's good policy to just say, all right, here's your lump sum, and then
Right.
no longer perform what we
But there's
expected
an
the
opportunity with
development
that.
to do. Pardon?
There's possibly an option with that to prepay it.
Correct. And then just in terms of the numbers that were provided here, generally rounded, I generally rounded or estimated lower on the revenue side and higher on the debt side. I think it's just to give some cushion sometimes as we go through and close out, and just to make sure we've got everything accounted for. We generally just like to have a little margin of safety in there.
And once we make that transfer, if there is a fund, if there is a balance at the end, that would get allocated back to all the taxing jurisdictions.
Correct.
So if we did transfer too much, in this case, more than we needed into that fund, it closed down, it would get allocated as a proration, it would be allocated back to the taxing jurisdictions when that's closed.
Correct. And our
So any surplus, are you thinking would go to the allocation amendment, or the 820 is fixed?
So the allocation amendment, we're asking for up to $1 million for this particular one. I think that's in the resolution packet. That's to allow for really a balance between, we're using TID 7, TID 8, and TID 12 to close out TID 9. I think one of the things, if to provide a little opportunity, if for some reason, because we do have some vacant property in TID 9, if they would request a reassessment and for some reason that value would go down a little bit, that increment wouldn't be as much there. And I think to allow for a little bit of flexibility, whether it comes from 7, 8, or 12, is why that's built in. The numbers add up in terms of what we've estimated as of today, that we feel comfortable. It's probably going to be around that number, and then I'll show the ones for 8 and 12. But in essence, I think we're only going to allocate as much as it takes to close TID 9. And with that, I think we've done the estimate so that we're conservative, that we're going to end up with a surplus somewhere. It's either going to be in 7, 8, or 12. And I think we do that so we can send you a check versus send a bill saying, okay, there's a deficit that we need to make up here. And so it just provides a little bit of wiggle room between those three. So whether the surplus is in 7, 8, or 12, it's going to be in one of those. Just not sure where exactly it's going to end up.
And you said that final resolution transfer allocation will come back to the JRB.
Correct. Yes. Yep. Yeah. So the allocation amendment will go to council, but then this body will authorize the final amount what to do. I think we did this when we closed down 6, 11, and 15. Just said, all right, here's where we think it's going to be in case the bill comes in a little higher or there's outstanding project costs. We just allow for a little margin in there. So kind of covered the 3 pieces of 7. So one is to look at the allocation amendment. That would be to go to close TID 9. The affordable housing resolution, which would allow for us to keep it open in 2021. And then the termination, which would officially end the tax increment district at the end of 2021. So we're proposing pretty much the same thing for tax increment district 8. TID 8 is Henry and Morrow Streets over on the east side of the city. This primarily for one big project, hasn't had a lot of other activity within it. With that, again, because we haven't had other activities, we've accumulated a pretty decent balance in that account. With that, we'll get some additional tax revenue this year. Public expenses right now is just basically admin costs or DOR fees, just marginal things that are accounted for to keeping this TID open. There's still some outstanding debt service. On that, again, same type of thing where we've got a debt service schedule. So with that, we'd like in 2020 basically to pay off or at least escrow the final amount for debt. And in this case, allocate, I think we asked for up to 1.5 million to help close out TID 9. We would keep this then open with an affordable housing resolution for 2021. And then this would be fully closed at the end of 2021.
So you're projecting 9 to be at $1.6 million as your deficit, but you've got $1 million and $1.5 million. I'm just trying to figure.
No, I'll get to 9. Our deficit for 9 is about 3.6 million.
Okay.
Because there's an existing hole and there's future
Okay,
costs.
but your future, your
Oh.
surplus or deficit was 1.6 a couple weeks ago, or as the year ended December 31st, 2018. That's what you showed as $1.6 million.
Yes, so we have, and I'll skip ahead a little bit. So we have about 1.6, or almost 1.5 in the hole right now, with an additional 1.6 yet to come, or that's outstanding.
But if we were to
obligations.
close this early, that 1.6 wouldn't come in, because that would be over the life of the remaining.
Correct. The problem with TID 9 is that the increment, the revenue is less than the expenses. That we are basically our bonding or debt service on that is 220,000, and we're only getting 190 increment in there. So if we let TID 9 ride out, it's progressively going to go further into the hole.
But your future project costs and your future revenue is only about $100,000 different, what you showed a couple weeks ago. So that $1.6 million was your ending projection.
Because we are at 1.6 million negative now, but we still owe 1.7 in debt service. That's how it comes over
Right,
to
but
3
your
million.
future revenue was $1.6 million.
But if we were to close it in the next 2 years, all that future revenue would not come in. So you would have, we have expenses and that revenue wouldn't come in. We could leave this open until the end of 2026, and it will still have about a negative $1.6 million. But every year we have a little more expenses than we have as revenue. Again, we could write it out to 2026 and it would have basically the same negative fund balance until that, end of the year. And then it would come out to 1.6. If we close it down now, we have 1.5 negative, plus we need to come up with 1.7 for debt. Now you're looking at over $3 million. Through these next couple of years, we have a little bit of revenue coming in, but all that 1.6 million of future revenues, we wouldn't get much of that in if we were to close it down early.
I think this is one, I'm trying to think which one was like this, 11? Might have been, I mean, I'll call it a stop the bleeding TID, and that is, the longer that we let this ride, I mean, the further of a hole we're gonna go into, and the harder it might be to close it out later. I think it's one of the things we've also had internal discussions about, development possibilities out there, and despite our efforts of bringing clients out to those properties and out to those sites, we haven't had any success. I think there's a perception that it's too far out. I think you'll also see in town of Scott, some adjacent properties too are the same way. Look, hindsight's 20/20, but in terms of the timing of this tax increment district was probably created at the worst possible time, right at the peak of the bubble, and just
Put a lot of infrastructure in without revenue coming in.
Correct. So we'll come back to TID 9, but so for TID 8, I believe there were 2 allocations, one to close TID 9, and maybe I think put this on here, but then also to close TID 17. There's a little outstanding balance, probably about $60,000, $70,000 for TID 17. We're currently in court with the developer right now over a development agreement where we're hoping to recoup some of that. But this is to also allow allocation from this to fully close out TID 17 as well. I think I talked a little bit about it last year, but it's one TID that was primarily done for one project, and the project's done, and it did not hit its target, and there's not gonna be any additional development on that.
So what is your max on TID 8
Max in terms of,
with the allocation?
I just wanna make sure I got the right numbers. Just pull out my packet. I think I said 1.5 for TID 9 and 100,000 for TID 17. Okay, yes. So the recommendation is 1.5, up to 1.5 for TID 9 and up to 100,000 for TID 17. Our estimate, based on where we think things will come out, would be about $60,000 for TID 17, with the remainder then for TID 9.
And then TID 9, your overall estimate in terms of the cost to close that out is what? I'm sorry.
So for TID 9, again, going back, our starting balance in the hole, almost $1.5 million. We're gonna go further in the hole this year. In 2020, our goal is to basically get 2.6. So that's the that's the balance of TID 7, TID 8, and then TID 12, which we'll talk about. $370,000 for TID 12. So those three altogether add up to about 2.6. That's enough, we feel, to bring it out of the hole and pay for the future outstanding debt service. So yeah, of that, the biggest chunk will come from TID 8, followed by TID 7, followed by TID 12. I think our discussion was that is TID 12's been a donor to other TIDs, and so we're going to use these TIDs to basically prioritize them first in terms of the allocation before we looked at TID 12. And then as we talk about TID 12, I think there's some bigger expenses in TID 12 that we want to make sure we have funds for that available up there.
Maybe to make sure that the numbers make sense, as again, we're at -1.5, we need another 1.7 for debt, that's at 3.2. And now he's only asking for 2.6, but this numbers are through the end of 18. He's showing increment for 3 more years, so he has a little over $500,000 of increment. So that future revenues that we showed 1.6, we were taking into consideration 3 more years of it.
Yep. Okay.
So, right, so back to, oops, wrong way. So for 8, in short, that allocation to help close down TID 9, 1 year for affordable housing, which would put $290,000 into that fund, and then termination, so it'd be fully closed end of 2021, and then back to the jurisdictions in 2022, which would be before, that one is scheduled to close also in 2029, so 7 years before mandatory termination.
All right, so 8 would close in 2000.
End of 2021.
Mm-hmm.
same as 7. So those allocations are going towards tax increment district 9, which is 54, 57, also known as University Heights. As I mentioned, this was created in 2003 with the expectations for a lot of big box development right along 54 and 57, and then some other additional industrial to the east. The city spent some money on infrastructure improvements, also acquiring land back at the time. Hit the recession and really never got development going out in this area. We have had some. The Aurora clinics out there, Hart Manufacturing started, which now has since closed, WS Packaging, but definitely not enough in terms of supporting the infrastructure that's been there, and that's why we're running the deficit that we are. This is an older TID. Again, it's continuing to go in the hole. We felt that it's prudent. The increment law allows, with the consent of the municipality and JRB, to use funds from other tax increment districts to allocate to others, and that's what we're asking in this one, to help close this one down. It's scheduled to close 2026. Our goal again would be to close it at the end of 2021 with the others. Getting the incremental allocations next year in 2020, that would give us the funds to have it closed down in 2021.
Can I ask a question? Does that mean you're closing the business park, or you're just closing out the TID?
We would just be closing out the tax increment district. So the city only owns one property, and in terms of, we branded it University Heights. I mean, that still exists. There's not necessarily a formal association to that, but we would just be closing out the funding mechanism. But as far as University Heights, I mean, most of it's private property, so it could still exist. We just will not have a tax increment district out there.
So what happens to all the infrastructure that's out there presently?
It stays. It's public infrastructure. So we spent, the city spent money on public roads, and so all of those still stay public.
But there's no roads out there.
I mean, aside from 54, 57, there were some improvements around Aurora, I think like equestrian. But as far as the future and planned roads,
Okay, I'm Diane Peters. We
Just
don't-
gonna ask the
Okay.
question, I was just gonna ask the
Sure.
same question, if we could open up to the public to speak, and then
Yep.
I would name
I
and
did
name
fill
and
out a
address,
slip, But I
please.
didn't know who to turn it
Yep,
to.
no,
Sure.
then this would be a good time if the committee wanted to open up to the public and hear comments.
Okay, I guess I was under the impression that this meeting was closing down the business park, and that's why I came, and I didn't know that it's just the TID that you're closing.
correct.
But there was a lot of money spent out there, and we did hit the recession. But we gave the city part of our land, so they put a road in. The road was never put in. This was given to them in 2003. There is no water to the property right now, so a lot of businesses don't want to build out there because there is no water. But there has been a lot of interest in the area. And for the people I talked to, when they called the city about getting some of the land, they were told to check Deep Pier out or the Howard Business Park out, that they were not looking to expand in that area.
I'll just respectfully disagree. I don't think anybody in our city would direct somebody to somewhere else. I think, our goal is to get development out there. Part of the challenge we have is the lack of infrastructure in terms of additional roads or water out there. I think we've
What
committed
happened
to.
to the water agreement, though? There was a water
Yeah,
agreement.
I think we might have to suspend the rules if you'd like to open up.
Yep, we would just suspend the rules to open up to the public. Do we take a motion? Is
I'll
there-
make a motion to suspend the rules to
Okay.
allow public comment.
All right. So we have a motion by Brent and second by Brad to suspend the rules and open up to the public. Would you like to come up to the podium, or at least turn in your slip, your name?
Oh, I'll turn this.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Sure. I guess I just want to know what's going on with the park, because I don't know.
Sure. So from our.
I know you said that Hart Manufacturing closed, but someone new bought that property, and they are moved in, they've been moved in for several months now. The gas station that had gone under a few years back, somebody's trying to get in there, they just recently had the gas established, now I think there's a problem, they can't get water or something, I'm not real sure what that is. He wanted to open up, one of the meetings was early in July, and he said he wanted to open up in 4 to 6 weeks. So I don't know where he's at with it, but there are people coming out there. We've been contacted about buying some of our land. The fella did not buy it, but we were contacted.
Okay.
But I would like to see the city maybe put a little more effort into that area. That's 1,100 acres of business park. There's no place in Green Bay for big business to go if you would get a big box or a big manufacturing place. There is no place in Green Bay that's got that much, contiguous acreage. So I guess
No,
I just want to make my concerns
Sure.
heard because it's a waste. It's a beautiful, beautiful area. I work on the west side. I can be on the west side from my home in 17 minutes. That's out towards Lambeau from my house, so it's not far out. People just don't know what's out there. They need to get in a bus and show them what they're missing, because it's just beautiful out there. And all the infrastructure's in, they've done studies. The money is spent, we just need to get people in there. And now it's kind of frustrating, they're going to expand the I-43 business park, and I did read something about there being a lot of wetlands, and they're gonna have to do studies on that. Now, we've got this land available, why not put the people here? It's basically shovel-ready. They need to just bring the water in. The sewer mains are all in. There's no roads, but that could happen.
Yeah, I totally agree with all of your points. As we've gotten requests for land, and especially large tracts of land, we've brought developers or site selectors to that area, maybe not in a bus, but we've brought them out there. We've talked about potential for sites, both the city site, but then also the private land that is out there. When it comes to infrastructure challenges, the water or interior streets, we haven't gotten to the point of negotiating a type of development agreement to get some of those projects. But after looking around, the clients have come to us and said they would rather be in I-43, which I think you made the point very well. It's not really that much farther, and actually parts of I-43 that are further east are probably further from the actual 4-lane freeway than a lot of the parcels here. Unfortunately, I can't force somebody to develop it. And the other part about, I think we made a decision not to continue to put additional infrastructure in, feeling that we don't want to continue to go down and racking up more debt of not having any known development coming out there. And so that's why we've not put in the rest of the roads or the streets or extended a lot of infrastructure out there, because the money we spent so far.
Are you still actively marketing this
Yes.
property?
Mhm.
Okay, because I know the only thing I saw was the billboard halfway to Sturgeon Bay on the wrong side of the road, on the back side of someone else's billboard. That's the
Sure.
only thing I saw as far as any push for University Heights.
Yep.
The website, I've been looking on the website, it might be updated now, but it went a good 6 to 9 months with no pictures at all, nothing. And if a developer is checking it out and they want to see something and they bring it up and there's no pictures, nothing current, they're not going to come here.
Yeah, I will say that we do continue to market that area. The market itself just hasn't felt that this has been the most appropriate spot to develop.
Are there any other questions from the committee? Any other concerns or discussion? Anything else from you?
No,
Okay.
I wanted to make sure they weren't closing the business park, that's all.
Okay.
Correct.
A motion to return to regular order of business?
So moved.
All right.
Second.
All right. Motion by Bob, second by Brent, move back to the regular order of business.
So the next one, dealing with TID 12, which is I-43 commercial development, for the business center. Again, this is another one of our larger tax increment districts. Has performed very well, probably outperformed some expectations. What we're looking to do is end this, terminate this at the end of 2022. Its mandatory termination date is 2025, but we feel we can get this done 3 years early. What we would like to do in 2019 is continue to finish infrastructure. Just gonna come up here. Part of last year's project, which is tied in a little bit with Nature's Way, we extended Erie Road down to accommodate their facility, and we'll be bringing Erie Road all the way down to the municipal boundary with the village of Bellevue. But a larger project is actually extending the sewer, sanitary sewer out into this area, along with water. It's basically end of the road, right up by Friar's Path. And this is a more substantial project that actually goes back all the way up through the Grandview properties to tie in, that will allow for additional expansion, basically east of Erie Road and south of Finger Road. We are looking at using our cash balance to do this. As Ms. Peters had mentioned, we're looking at the potential expansion of the I-43 business park. And I think, she brings a good point. There's two different layers here. There's the business park in terms of what's covered under the planned unit development in terms of zoning and uses we allow out there. And then there's a tax increment district, which is the financing piece of it. Before we expand that planned unit development, the business park itself, we want to be able to use property that's within this TID to expand infrastructure, so that if we do look at a new tax increment district for development out here, we don't, like University Heights, we don't have to spend a ton of money up front, that we're using our cash balance now to build that infrastructure, so that we can operate the new one more of a pay-go than putting out a lot for infrastructure. So we've talked with our Department of Public Works and put together some estimates for basically finishing out and expanding to allow that area to get serviced, and coming up probably about $3 to $3.5 million. With that, we have some outstanding development expenses, some debt that's left outstanding for some projects that we have undertaken in the business park itself. We feel we need 2 more years fully of running this to account for it. One of the biggest question marks in here will be the development expenses you see in 2021. That would be an escrow amount primarily geared towards the Nature's Way project. With that, that project won't be online until hopefully 1/1 of 20. Again, it's the state doing the assessment of manufacturing. We had estimated 15 million. There's a good chance that'll probably be in below it. But that's a pay-go mechanism to do that. And so we basically just estimated out, it comes in at 15 million and they get, per the agreement, a percentage all the way up to $3 million. And just estimated like it was all going to happen. These will probably adjust. I'm guessing those numbers will probably come in lower in terms of what they are going to project in terms of that development expense. With that though, just again to kind of be conservative, I didn't estimate them into any of the increment here. So because they're not online yet, so this is just using existing increment like they didn't even exist. So again, with that, the amount, when we talk about like surplus, there's a very good chance there's going to be surplus left in this. That's going to get divvied up to the taxing jurisdictions. Again, here we're asking for a year for the Affordable Housing Fund. This will put a substantial amount into that fund. I think in terms of when we talk here at the city about programs and housing and how important it's become, when we look at also other revenue sources, our block grant funding has been pretty stable, but our home funding has decreased, and we also want to look at ways that if we can reduce borrowing for programs like our neighbor enhancement to capitalize it with these funds will go a long way in terms of we're actually having a discussion about how these funds would be used. I think a combination of grants, but also some revolving loan programs that we can continue to grow that fund
Are there areas that you're targeting on the affordable housing, or that's still being developed, or?
So, we don't have a specific, I guess, policy in place. One is, I mean, if we are to do this, those funds aren't going to be in for about 2 more years. The initial discussions we've had are, how could we complement some of our existing programs right now? So things, one of the challenges we talked about is we have a program that's geared towards low to moderate income individuals to basically do rehab on your house. It's block grant dollars. If you're below a certain threshold in terms of qualifying, you can get money to fix up your house. We've actually used it for a good number of seniors who are on fixed income and live in an older house and they can fix it up. But what we're missing is a gap of people who are above that income level and are paying more than 30% of the income of housing, but they don't qualify as LMI. And so we can't help them because we can't use those block grant dollars. So here's a way we could use, right, to help expand that program and put some money in there. Another one is our neighborhood enhancement program. We've been targeting a lot of our near-in neighborhoods, taking our vacant lots, city-owned, RDA loan, or ones that we get through foreclosure, rehabbing homes, or putting a new home on a vacant lot. Again, to be able to target, to bring in a mix of market and affordable housing under those as well. And then the third program, talking about, I'm blanking on it now, but I think in terms of, we'd like to leverage our existing programs. And then, the third would just be looking at larger scale developments that aren't in tax increment districts. So for example, the Friar House Flats, which is over on like Irwin and Cass, it's a substantial redevelopment project, both of the Friary and a new project to build some additional townhomes. It's 100% affordable, but they're not in a tax increment district over there, and probably wouldn't be good to create one over there. It's not, right, there's no other projects, but this would be one that we could help support a developer to get a larger scale project like that done. So we talked about a balance among those projects, but with that, we are undergoing right now, just kind of aside, are updating our comprehensive plan and updating our 5-year consolidated action plan, which we have to do for block grant. And those are probably going to guide where we target those affordable housing funds.
So you have about $3 million to work with based off of what you're proposing here?
Correct.
And then what does TID 24 look like? Have you thought about, I'm just thinking, you're putting in the infrastructure in advance of.
Sure. So, yep, TID 24 is going to look, we're debating right now, so we just completed a wetland delineation study for basically everything out this way. And so we're going through right now and reviewing that. It's wet like most of Green Bay is. And we're really trying to get our arms around what are the most developable sites. I think, Ms. Peters had a good point. What are the sites that have the largest tracts of land together? And it's probably going to be looking more along Mason and Finger, and it's probably going to not cover as much down here. There's just too many pockets.
And the only reason I ask that question is that, to spend $3.3 million in infrastructure, there probably needs to be a fairly defined plan in terms of what that next step is versus spending $3.3 million only to find out that it's not developable,
right,
developable, and all those types of things.
And so one of the things it did confirm, at least from the Erie Road perspective, that this area around Erie and off of Mason is developable. And so in terms of just keeping on track of where that primary infrastructure is going to go, it's really the big sewer interceptor that's going to be running in this area that's going to service as you come out. But right now, there's zero capacity to do anything additional. But I'll just back up. So the initial wetland study, though, there is developable land. And so in terms of creating that, it's not going to go as far south and east probably as the city boundary, but there's enough capacity out there to get some pretty large chunks of land. The city owns right off Finger. We have 80, 90 acres. And there's a bunch of big 40s in there that we feel are developable enough, or it's worth putting in that infrastructure. Again, to Ms. Peters' point, those industrial users want to be out in this area. And so we're really going to target, again, keeping that primary development, or at least the industrial south of Mason, but that there's enough in there to warrant, I think, the expense on it.
That's just
Sure.
that'd be my comment is I'd like to see something that's fairly concrete before I authorize 3.3 million, because again,
Sure.
that's.
I think probably before, when we come back and get, from Public Works, ask for a little bit more of the plan, and probably have some more data on the wetland assessment to kind of see what's developable out there.
And what's the rationale for not terminating this in 2021 and then creating the new TID, putting the 3.3 million in under the TID 24 or whatever number we're on at that point to evaluate? I mean, that way we
Sure.
can see whether that's a success, whether it's worth the 3.3 with the development. Now we're going to kind of be hiding the full cost of the infrastructure.
If we cut it off in a year early, we're basically taking out a year of increment of 2.2 million. And that's what we feel is substantial enough to be able to pay in cash and not start TID 24 in a hole saying, look, we're going to allocate this all, and hopefully they'll build it. I think it's developable, just like University Heights is developable. But if 2020 is the year that we go into recession, I don't want to have all that on the books and then, okay, it takes 3, 4, 5 years before that development starts to come back and help pay for those expenses. So we did actually run a scenario where we looked at it, let's say, in a 7 and 8 ending in 2021, and it put more of the burden on a future TID. But I think to Mr. Matthews' point, to come back and kind of show where that infrastructure is going to be and what that developable land is on, we can do that before approve the resolution for this.
I mean, essentially you're asking us to fund future initiatives based
Correct.
off of the good work that's been done out there, but it's, again, if you have a recession and we're just out the money, so anyway,
Yep.
that's, I mean, it's
It's a fair point,
$3.3
yes.
million one way or the other, whether
Yep.
it's part of your new TID or it's part of this TID, it's still the risk profile, and I'd like to understand that.
Okay, yeah, we can get some information on that.
Thank you.
And to our comment before, we've decided that the 43 Business Park is going to be a better investment for that 3.3 million than to continue the infrastructure where TID 9 was.
The clients we've had want to be out in I-43. I think the perception, it's closer, even though, if you look at, where you are, most of the properties in 9 are right off the interchange. They're all right here. By the time you get out here,
I'm
It's
just
a lot
curious.
further.
I'm just curious how just that infrastructure maintains as you build out.
Sure.
That artery starts to clog if you have a higher level of business, because it gets fairly busy right now. If you continue to expand out, you're talking about probably widening. There's
right.
those
Yep.
are the conversations I think are pertinent.
Sure. But in terms of interest, I think people want to be located near other businesses in this area, and they're just, it's been a successful area, and people want to be near the success, and there's a little hesitation, I think, about going into a newer area, even though you might be able to get, a better project or something that fits your needs. This is pretty solid, and that's where people have asked to be located. But it will, just for the record, not for lack of marketing or effort of bringing, when we have big sites, some of our biggest sites are out there, and it's not moving anywhere. All right.
So let me ask
Well,
this
yeah.
question. I'm going to ask
Sure.
this question. So if it weren't available, so if there's land available in I-43 Park, and that's my preference, if there wasn't land available, would they go to Scott? Would they go to 9? So part of it is I like a house here and I like a house here, and if there's no houses here, I pick this one. And it's just a question.
Yeah.
Is it timing of infrastructure? Because the infrastructure water is not out in TID 9?
No, because I think we've also said the same thing. Just off the map to the left, it still is town of Scott. As you go west of FECO there, and really, we participate, we have a joint planning board between the two. We get our first real actionable item since I've been here, almost 5 years, and it's for mini storage, which doesn't really need utilities and doesn't provide a lot of tax revenue. And I think, we've said too, I mean, about putting chicken and the egg, kind of want a development that's going to help pay the bills if we're going to continue to spend money and put additional infrastructure. Yeah, and I think the same thing, if you look at Scott, I mean, it's not like there's been additional development out there.
Do you know what's going in that industrial park in Scott?
So far, it's been some mini storage, or they call
Is
them
that what-
mini businesses. They're, I don't know, a bunch of big
They
garages.
haven't disclosed it yet in
Yeah.
Scott, but
I mean,
there's
it's kind of what
something
they've-
going up.
I mean, that's what I've seen develop. I know that they've hinted at additional
Storage
development out there,
condos or
but
something, is that
Those are coming.
yeah. I don't think it's anything in terms of high-paying jobs or a lot of big value. I mean,
okay,
it hasn't.
okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. TID 13, amending the project plan for downtown redevelopment. This is TID 13, covers the northern end of the core business district. We're asking to amend the project plan to allow for funds to be allocated to purchase the Associated Bank parking lot. This parking lot actually was in TID 11 before we closed it. TID 11 was expanded, included all the parcels along Monroe Avenue, basically kind of a little on the early side of it as Main Street was developing. You looked at, I think this was done right after, or right during when Monroe Avenue was reconstructed, saying, look, you just got this brand new street through here, you've got some prime parcels, let's redevelop it. But with that, the rest of TID 11 wasn't performing, that's why we closed it down a few years ago. So it left the Associated Bank parcel basically not being in the tax increment district. The tax increment law allows you to do improvements, one that are directly related to the TID. I mean, one of the things we've looked at in terms of moving pieces around with the expansion of the convention center, the Main Street ramp, we'll call it overutilized sometimes, but also has a limited lifespan. And so short term, I mean, to be able to help with some parking needs. But the other, it also allows for improvements within a half mile of the district. And I think we look at being able to do this parking short term for infrastructure, but long term, I mean, this is a development site. And then with that would potentially become a part of TID 13 or part of TID 20, which is the Whitney Park right to the east. But I think one of the things that we've looked at in terms of allocation, we've kept, or we created TID 20 as a pretty much a pay-go one. We didn't really want to saddle that with a lot of debt right up front. There's a larger, and a lot more volume happening in 13, where we already have some debt incurred on that, and there's more, I guess, I don't know what to call it, increment, in terms of there's a bigger cushion in terms of some of the projects that are there versus the ones that Whitney have been smaller. And so that's why we're asking for the amendment to include amending the project plan with this acquisition in there.
So how much is the acquisition?
1.2 million.
Are there any future plans for that parking lot?
So we are going to be leasing it out in the short term, but we have a request for proposals out right now for development that the RDA issued in July to get those back for review this month, and then either September or October present those options to the redevelopment authority to do a development on those parcels. It's a whole city block. It's rare you get a city block in the downtown. I think at the time it was important for the city to look. We had a clause in our development agreement back to the Associated moving into Regency Center, and thought it was in our best interest to basically control the future development of that site in the long term.
So is it a speculative buy, or is it a defined? I mean, if there's a quick turn on it, I mean, versus a speculative?
Sure. So I guess a little of both. We've had interested parties in that site before, not when it was under our control. We've had some who have expressed interest before we purchased it. The side piece is that we believe that we can generate enough revenue on it to help cover, or if not cover, the debt service on it while we hold it in the interim. And so because we can lease it out for parking, we can basically pay for our holding costs. So we're not going to be sinking into further debt while we're holding it. I think that was one of the things that we discussed in terms of just buying a grass lot where you can't really do anything with it versus buying a parking lot where we could charge monthly revenue or for parking passes on that to get revenue while we're holding it, with the hope that we're not holding it long to be able to turn it around in development, that we had some ways to cover our costs in the interim.
Are you taking into account that this was an associated property before, so there was tax being generated, and now as a City of Green Bay property, it'll be off the tax roll?
Yes.
Yeah, and even with that, but there won't be enough parking revenue to actually purchase the property. Like if this was a parking lot for the next 20 years, it wouldn't repay the TID directly.
Reframe that again.
You said that it was enough to pay the debt for that, but it's not enough to pay the principal on the debt. Is that right, or does it pay the principal?
No.
No,
Yeah, it would
it
cover
should,
it.
it should cover the
Yes.
debt service for the purchase of it over the life of the 20 years. If we had a parking lot for 20 years, it should cover the debt service,
Correct.
yes. But that definitely was not the intent to buy it, with the development, hopefully to follow within the next couple of years.
Correct.
So is there anything that says you need to act on it now? I mean, what's the benefit of acting on it now versus acting on it when you have something developable? Because you have access to it. So at any point in time, you can come back to this group and say, hey, we've got a plan, versus lumping it all in now. Just a question.
Our option to purchase, we had an end date on that, and we had to make a decision on it by the end of 2018. In terms of our right, our ability to purchase, expired at the end of 2018. And so we were in a spot where we had to decide to do it or not, and our redevelopment authority and council decided to do it.
So it's really not an option. I mean, you're saying
Well-
we need $1 million. You're saying we're going to buy it. It's just whether you fund it out of this TID or not. So I'm
Correct.
just, yeah, well,
Yep.
that's a different conversation.
Correct.
So-
So no, it's been acquired. It's looking at the
Funding.
amendment, because these take effect right 1/1/19. Would we have said, look, we would have used this TID to acquire it,
Okay.
or we go back?
So you're asking
and-
us to fund the purchase
Correct.
with the TID?
Yes. Which is, I think, look, I mean, you can read a project plan and say, oh, there's acquisition and things like that, but I feel like this is a big enough one that formal action to amend the project
No,
plan is probably warranted.
That's fine. I'm just getting grounded on what you're asking.
Sure.
And does that mean that it would become part of the TID, or is it already?
No, we're only recommending amending the project, which you're allowed to do projects or have project costs within a half mile, so we're just adding it to the project plan without including it in the tax increment district.
And the rationale is the additional parking would drive development in this TID?
Correct.
Is that-
In terms of, when we look at our overall parking needs, the capacity for Cherry, Pine, Main Street has greatly increased. And in terms of both, the additional employees that we added downtown, for example, like Imperial, right across the street, the Press Gazette building, the one on the corner is going to be, the census is going in there. We'll be ramping up redevelopment of the Press Gazette itself. I mean, there's longer-term employees who are looking for an all-day spot to park, and that's what's driving our demand up. The ramp, we charge a rate. Uncovered parking, we charge a little lower rate, and there's an appetite kind of for both. And that's where we see the demand being driven from those because of what's happening with the employees down
So
here.
is your plan for parking or for development? I'm just trying to understand what your.
Our plans for development, but we wanted to do development in order to reduce the risk of speculation. We had a way to like make it cash flow in the meantime.
Right.
I don't think this is not our long-term parking solution. It's a short-term parking
Right.
solution.
It's
until we-
convenient. It's convenient to generate revenue on the acquisition until you find your long-term plan, if you had it your way, would be development of that property.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And our parallel with that is there's the long-term plan. We need another covered parking structure.
Right.
Because Main Street, the clock is ticking on it. And so.
How long is that clock? Is it imminent?
Year term 20, I have to look at the Schreiber agreement. I want to say it's 2030.
So that comes down or it gets rebuilt?
So Schreiber has an option to say that it comes down.
For their expansion or
Correct.
for?
Mhm.
So you're anticipating the need for additional parking because that's a fairly big parking.
Correct. There's also, just in terms of its functional life, it's
Mhm.
kind of close to the same time.
Right.
So you could do substantial maintenance, or again, based on where it's at on Main Street, you probably wouldn't build it the same way that
Right.
you did then. So you'd
Mhm.
probably build a new facility.
But it's not an option to build it there if Schreiber buys it.
Correct. Correct. And in the meantime, even if you build it right there, those cars have to go
Yep.
somewhere.
I guess as parking, it makes sense to add it, to have the TID purchase it. But as a future development, it doesn't make sense for the TID to have purchased it. Will there be a repayment when this development happens, or is there some contingency? Because as a developed property outside of the TID, it doesn't make sense for us to be purchasing the property.
That's one of the things we've considered in terms of, okay, if it gets repaid or the land sales going back into the TID because it's no longer a parking use, or if we were to extend it into another TID with a development agreement, probably go into the Whitney Park TID versus this one. But that's one if the cost didn't pertain to it, that we would reallocate towards the purpose that's being used for. But right now, because we don't have a development project on it, the purchase is for infrastructure for parking. And that's why it's being proposed in TID 13.
So if it does get developed, we're going to come back to another amendment on a different TID to probably fund the development costs.
Correct.
Right.
And most likely, right, added into a tax increment
Right.
district. I think one of the things was timing, and that's why I put the slide in about 11. It wasn't a tax increment district, it just
Mhm.
was in one that wasn't performing. And so, it was noted that there was development potential for this, but it wasn't worth saving the rest of the rest of 11 just for these particular sites.
Is it adjacent to the Whitney Park, or how? How
About a
many blocks?
block off. So Whitney Park, basically the block between Quincy and Jackson. So it's a block away.
Are there funds in the Whitney Park TID if we said we think this is more appropriate to put it there right away rather than have you come back and tell us that you want an amendment again?
No, so that's a new TID, so it just
Open in
started, so
18.
we'll get our first projects online fully
That's a pretty small
1/1/20,
TID too.
which then will start generating increment for that, but no, there's not a cash balance in the fund right now.
And if there's funds from the parking to pay the debt service on this, is there, I guess, what's the difference if the city of Green Bay keeps it and has the parking pay the debt service versus the TID paying for it and have it pay our debt service? If it's income, if it's revenue expense neutral, then why go through this?
I think one of the things we looked at in terms of where we bond and have allocated our funds, and I mean, you could probably explain a little bit more in terms of our balance of levy-supported TID, enterprise-supported TID, and, bonding. Levy-supported bonding, enterprise, like parking utility-supported bonding, and tax increment district-supported bonding. And one of the things that we felt was best is that, again, based on development, other projects in this increment district, that was more closely tied to those needs versus just a general purpose levy bonding.
So if we said no,
Mhm.
how would you fund it? Because you're stuck, you got a commitment without funding base right now, how would you fund it?
We would have to go back to our council and basically ask them where would they like this allocated or drawn from.
Okay. I'm not trying to be difficult.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
just saying
no,
it's
that's
like-
Who's gonna be parking there?
Um,
City employees, county employees?
So I know the city and county are discussing potential use of some of those spots. And then we've also reached out to a number of businesses who may purchase packages. And then it will be put out just for anyone downtown
Downtown parking.
who's currently renting a spot or looking for a spot to be able to use that.
Just for the record, I
Okay.
had to leave like a 25 and I'm asking all the
Okay.
questions, so I'm just telling you,
Yep.
I had to leave. I'm not being rude,
We're almost done.
Commitment at 6, all right, thanks.
Thank you, Jesse.
So on TID 14, two requests here. One is for this is TID 14, it's North Broadway, basically the old Larson Green area, north of Dousman, east of Broadway to the railroad tracks. As you see, there's been significant redevelopment in this area. What we would like to do with this, two things. One is a request for a territory amendment to add 4 additional parcels. Actually, one of this year, it was one parcel. And this is, the developers purchased a slice of the CN Railroad right-of-way. And so to add those parcels into the tax increment district, development as proposed will extend on both sides of this. And so we'd like to be able to include these parcels in the tax increment district. They're coming in, they were CN owned, so they're coming with a zero base value. They're blighted, there's environmental issues on them. So to add these in. And then the second request is for a standard extension to extend this to 3 years. Basically, what we are looking to do is we do not believe that we can fully cover our project costs and the time that's been allocated. I think one of the reasons is this whole area went through a pretty public fiasco in terms of development and ownership, really starting with the Walmart debate. And when the city said no to Walmart, BMO Harris, who was the owner of the note, basically said on Broadway, yep, you need to pay us. And on Broadway's like, we don't have the funds. And so the city, or BMO turned to the city and is like, look, you guaranteed this note, we're coming to you. We don't want the property, we want to get paid back, we're done forbearing, game over. And so with that, basically put us more or less in almost 3 years of kind of unraveling that deal, the redevelopment authority owning it, and then trying to get a new development agreement for that area. So we really were fully off the tax rolls for 1-2 years? I'm trying to think the timing couldn't have been worse, like it happened in December of 16, and so then
December
of
of
7.
18, I think December of 18 when we sold it,
Right.
it would have been 2 years off tax.
And basically just, prevented us from all that increment, which wasn't a lot, but enough, even though it was undeveloped, and really just put us behind in terms of the timetables for development on that property. With that, we believe that we need those funds to make the affordable housing project work up on the north side, and then also completing environmental remediation and the infrastructure, that we're going to need that extra time to be able to fulfill those obligations. And so the request for this is the territory amendment and a standard extension, which would push this out from its normal termination date of 2033 to 2036.
Are there plans for the parcels that you're looking to add? I mean, is that?
Yes, so these are primarily going to be where the condominium units are. And so right now they are under construction of 8 units, which I think there's 2 or 3 open. Those will be all set for the end of the year. But along this right side is where they plan to develop their condominium units. They wanted a little more breathing room. Oh, hi.
Hi, Kevin.
Just moved in.
One of the potential property owners.
Oh, she's in. She's
Right.
in.
So there's limited options for where we put the street through here. And so there's those giant power lines that run through. And so in order, because there's a setback from that, we ran the street right under the power lines because you can't do anything else there. But with that, it kind of creates a narrow space in here for development. And so they worked with CN basically to get, I think, 40 more feet, 60, maybe 50 more feet, just to give a little more room in there so that they're not crammed right up against the railroad track. So they are under development in terms of that will be taxable property that wasn't taxable before.
And even with that, you still need 3 years.
Correct. So the condo units, will generate some additional extra increment in there. I think the bigger thing, the reason for the extension would have come regardless of adding these parcels, is due more to the, I guess we'll call it 2 years on hiatus, where there's like 0 increment, and 0 taxes coming in, which kind of put us, right, it started to roll back our balance because we weren't getting any increment from that. But then also just the amount of infrastructure that's needed in there. Pretty substantial environmental work that needs to be done in putting in the streets and utilities. Construction costs haven't gotten cheaper in the last 2-3 years. And so we just felt that we would need that extra time to be able to pay the amount to get that infrastructure fully in. With that, what the infrastructure does is really make all this area in the middle developable, because now you've got the service from both sides. Probably see we've been talking about some potential projects in there, but really helps fill out the neighborhood, and we'll get the increment to fulfill and do that. We just feel because we're starting to creep up on that end time that we need the additional 3 years to make it, over that hump. All right, and then TID 17, this is North Broadway. This is the one I talked about earlier. Project was completed, developer did not meet obligations. We're currently undergoing litigation to recover on that. But with that, there's no further activity here. If we have potentially kind of as a backstop on the application, this is about 70,000 in the whole in terms of $61,517.
Yep, about 67. Yep.
And when would you close?
What's that?
When would you close?
We would close this, I think I put on there at the end of next year. So this would be closed at the end of 2020.
Yep, just for the groups, so there is another meeting that starts at 5:30 in here.
Home stretch. We'll get you out of here on time. And then the last two are the two creations. One is for the shipyard, which is basically area south of Walnut and west of the Fox River, east of Ashland. The boundary, I know it's a super goofy looking tax increment district, but there's one railroad parcel that just has this huge tail that goes all the way down to Lombardi, and it's actually a parcel, not a right-of-way. So that's why it's included in there. We try to put an inset so you can get a little better look at like the main parcels, which are right around basically Mason and Broadway. This is an area, as we've discussed, about investment for the shipyard district, where the city is looking at doing the shipyard itself on the southern edge of the parcel, and then Breakthrough Fuel to construct the headquarters on the north side. We've looked at, so on the project Performa, some different development sites in there where we feel over the course of the tax increment district, we would generate enough revenue to help support that development. I think one of the things, the reasons for a tax increment district here, I'm surprised, not surprised, but if you look at the base value of this whole district, it's not even $3 million. I mean, over 55 acres, but a lot of tax exempt property we own, school district owns, church owns, or surface parking, or vacant land. And so in terms of investment in the city, yes, this is probably one of the more aggressive TIDs we've done in terms of the pro forma and projections in terms of spending money up front. But we do believe that we do have projects phased in over a reasonable time period to cover costs, and also believe in terms of investment that it's really, I guess, badly needed in this area. As you can see, I don't think it's the parcels that we took out of, or proposing to take out of TID 5, I mean, even during that time, hadn't really appreciated in value. And so for us to put some investment in, and we kind of compared this to the city deck, you know, putting a substantial public infrastructure in to generate the private side investment, that moved forward, and we'd like to propose the same thing in this area here. And then the other creation was for 23. This is going to replace some of what will go out of TID 7. Primarily indicated, one of the near-term development projects is the Legacy Hotel on the site of the former Brookdorf Steakhouse. But in terms of other major redevelopment sites, we've talked about the White Star parcels, which are around Canadeo, the parking lot of the Stadium View, and then also the Badger State, the Hudson Sharp building, having some additional development potential with that. This is being proposed primarily as a PAYGO TID. The development agreement for Legacy Hotel is a PAYGO. We would anticipate, based on, again, using TID 7 to improve the infrastructure in this area, that this would not need substantial infrastructure improvements and really be looked at on the back end being a PAYGO TID.
On anything between 1 and 17?
Yep.
Yes.
I know we're going to take them all together, but should I recuse myself from maybe 13 and 14? Is that, or-
Yeah, you probably,
Okay.
right, as having
Yeah.
connection to the development entity involved in that tax
Yep.
increment district. I would just, formally
Okay.
state
Okay.
that.
13 and 14?
Yeah, so I guess
Okay.
if we make a motion,
Okay,
I'll just, maybe we can do it separately, those two,
sure.
unless everyone else has something else to.
Any other questions?
The breakthrough acquisition hasn't changed anything, right?
No, so we've had, discussions with them, and basically, right, the US Venture has now taken control of Breakthrough, but we've met with them, and they still intend to move forward on that parcel.
Does the bond rating for the city, the downgrade, does that impact the cost of borrowing on any of these calculations? Have we looked at that, or?
We just went out, so you'd be able to
We
tell.
just went out and we just did a refunding, and our financial advisor said it probably was about 10 basis points is what it affected on our last refunding. Our current borrowing, again, they said 10 to 20 basis points. So there's a slight increase because of the downgrade.
But that was taken into account, or you just don't think that that's going to have, it's going to be within the rounding that Kevin was talking about? Director
For,
Vaughn.
I don't know if we have any borrowing requests.
I think you maybe talking about like in the performer for like.
Yeah, the pro forma for the infrastructure and the debt
But we
related.
tend
So-
to, we tend to be very conservative when you're doing your.
Correct.
estimates.
I can tell you what I estimated. I think
You said
we talked
4.5%.
4.5%.
Yeah. So
Oh, yeah.
Which area, we did not borrow at
Yeah.
that levels.
Okay.
Any other questions for Director Vaughn? Otherwise, I would take a motion to approve 1 through 12, 15 through 17.
I'd move to consider 9 and 12 separately.
Okay? Okay.
So we're going to take 9, 12, 13, and 14 separately.
Yes, can we take?
Okay.
All right. Do we we have a motion on the remaining items for to approve?
So I'll make a motion to approve 1 through 8, 10, 11, 15, 16, 17.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Brent, second by Brad. Any discussion? Motion to, all in favor? Please say aye. That motion passes. I will take the other ones separate. A motion on number 9 to adopt the allocation amendment resolution for Plan 12, District 12.
And the reason I called this one separately, just to explain, is that we had the discussion about whether to spend the $3 million, and I wasn't sure if we wanted to forego a decision on that, or if we wanted to at least call it separately to a vote.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my question is that what are the implications if we table 9? Until
So,
there's more information.
sure, so this is an organizational meeting, so
Mhm.
this is basically saying that the recommendations are to recommend RDA and council look at this. In terms of adopting a formal allocation, the formal action will come after the redevelopment authority and council looks at this. So in terms of, I guess in terms of your recommendation here, it's advisory, if I can use that word.
Yep.
But this will come back to you in terms of the actual amendment at the final meeting, which will be after later in September.
I guess I just want to be noted that there's, I think, personally, I have concern with 9.
Okay.
So.
And I do too, which is why I called it
So,
out.
I mean, I don't know if you have.
To come back with,
I'd like to see it.
Yeah.
But we'll get another chance to review this.
Right, but I
Correct.
think it's important that it's not everybody,
Yep.
JRB signed off. I would like it to be noted that there's concern on 9, that we'd like more information.
okay. And I will see if I can get, work with DPW to get you ahead
Okay.
of that meeting, so you have time to review.
Okay.
So at this point, do we have a motion to adopt the allocation amendment resolution, knowing that it's going to be coming back to the GRB?
Given that, I'll
Given
move
that,
to approve.
and given that communication that there's, we need more information on that. We can move it forward, but
Right.
with that caveat.
Would take a motion?
Move.
Okay,
Second.
by Brad, a second by Brent. All in favor?
Aye.
That's approved. Moved on to number 12,
I move.
consideration with possible action for the resolution to amend TID 13. Can we take a motion for that adoption?
I will move.
Okay, we have a motion by Bob,
Second.
second by Brent. All in favor?
Aye.
That's approved. Then we are going to take number 13 and 14 together. And that is where Brent would like to recuse himself.
Abstain, yeah.
Abstain. Anyone want to make a
I'll move.
motion? All right, Brad made a motion.
I'll second.
Second.
Take it.
Second by Keel. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that is approved. And Brent abstained.
Thank you.
There are no other items on the agenda. A motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Brett, second by Brad. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions?
No, you're good. I'm always amazed how big.
Chad would have
Green
been
Bay
proud.
is.
Thanks.
How big Green Bay is on the other side.
Oh, yeah. You forget how far.
There's like no houses. It's just
So you see a map and you're like, oh, there's that whole big chunk out there that isn't even connected.
You know Mark's story, right? Yeah. He's one of the most famous guys.